Hello and welcome to Y Button, the podcast that asks why we care about video games. I'm your host, Kyle Starr. On this show, I typically interview creators, enthusiasts, journalists, and media personalities about their origins with video games, what keeps them so interested in the medium, even when they're not playing, and what excites them about the future. On this episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different. If this is your first episode of Y Button, I would suggest you stop now and go back and listen to the previous episode with Kevin Nguyen. It's pretty important for this episode, which I'm going to just go solo on. I have had a lot of thoughts since that interview and since a lot of life changes about games and what they mean to me and why I play them, and I thought I would explore that on this episode. So I think that episode in particular is great context for what I'm about to talk about. What I want to do is, I want to share kind of where I am since that episode. It's been a while. I recorded that episode with Kevin back in May. During that episode, I touched on a few different things. One of which is that we had recently had our second child, our son, and so I was a new father once again, new to having two, and I didn't quite appreciate how challenging that would be at the time. He'd been around for already about a month, close to a month and a half at that point, or coming up on a month and a half. We were just kind of back in the throes of having a newborn child in the house, and that can be pretty challenging. I did not anticipate was juggling that with a now 3.5-year-old. At the same time, and how challenging a 3-year-old can be. 3 is a tough age, and 3 is an even tougher age when you're also juggling a newborn at the same time. After I finished that episode with Kevin, took a step back and thought, like, man, that was a lot of effort. There's a lot of work. I also was trying to finish his book at the same time before I recorded that episode, and I just felt like I didn't have the space to prep. It was very strange. Like, all of a sudden, my time was gone in a way I hadn't experienced before. And so I kind of said, maybe this is not the right time for more Y Button. Maybe it's not the right time to challenge myself in this way. Even though I'm on leave from work, even though I feel like I might have a little bit of space in my day, I really didn't. Now we're nearly 9 months later recording this episode, and I don't feel like that's changed at all. So during that episode with Kevin, there was a moment where I mentioned that I don't get the same satisfaction out of reading about games and reading games media as I do listening to games media. And I hadn't really ever put this to words until in that very moment in that show. And it sort of was an epiphany to me. Like, I think I actually like listening to people talk about games more than anything, more than even playing the game sometimes. I'll play that clip right now. Do you have a thought as to why we have a hard time writing about games? Like, is it just that it doesn't translate well to there's obviously, again, going back to Polygon and lots of other great writers out there that I appreciate their work and read about games, but I'll be the first to admit that I don't know if I get the same, if reading about games evokes the same sort of feelings, or I don't know if it's nostalgia or whatever it is, as people maybe talking about games. For me, at least, I think I get most of that vibe from the talking about it. Maybe that stems back to the schoolyard conversations when you'd go play a game at home and then you'd come back to the schoolyard and you'd talk to your friends about you did X, Y, and Z in the game, and you would kind of talk about these things, and they seemed grander than they may actually have been on the surface. In the last episode of Y Button, I mentioned this idea that games can feel organic in an odd way. They're these digital things that feel extremely organic, and you can kind of make your own story by just the interactivity of it. And I'm wondering if there's something about the grandeur that we give these things when we talk about it versus we write about it, and maybe if that doesn't translate as well to the written word, or even watching something passively through a medium like film or something like that. After I said that and listened back to this episode a few times, it kind of rocked me. I was like, have I actually found the thing that I've been searching for, which is actually not being in the games media or even, being a part of a developer, but just listening to people talk about games? Is that what gives me satisfaction? Am I trying so hard to be part of this that's not actually the thing that motivates me or that lights me up? Is it just listening to people talk? There's a moment during my episode with Chris Plant, I think, where I wax poetic sort of about one of my favorite shows, Into the Aether. Why do I like the podcast Into the Aether so much? And I think it's because, as you were saying that, I think it's because the way Brendan and Steven describe games is very similar to that feeling that I got when I was when I read magazines, or when I was reading magazines, and I'd only have a sliver or a screenshot or a paragraph or something that would describe it briefly. And my head, my mind, my imagination would just make it more than what it is. But the way they describe the game is way more colorful, way bigger. It may be spot on with it. It may be bigger than it, but the story they tell around the game and what's happening is so vivid that it's almost more fun to listen to that and let my imagination go wild and live in this world. It's a storytelling medium, their podcast, really, for me. And that's kind of what I get out of it and why I enjoy it so much. And yeah, it's not that I'm playing those games. It's that I just enjoy listening to the world that's being created and described for me. And I don't know why that feels unique to games, but it sort of does.
Yeah, I think, well, it's certainly unique to that podcast. I love their show, and I love both of them. I don't always love playing the games that they talk about.
Right.
Kind of for the reason that you're saying, because I think you're right that they really bring their imagination to every gaming experience. And their gift is, one, to be able to do that, to like truly role play every game that they turn on, not just role playing games, but everything that they are in conversation with every game. They're in performance with it. And then to be able to bring that back to the podcast and describe that not as a thing that they did, but just as what the game is. I think that's like such a beautiful way of talking about and engaging with games.
So that was really interesting to me, and I couldn't stop thinking about that wow, I love listening to podcasts. And then started thinking maybe I listen to too many podcasts. That it's really kind of all encompassing. It's all I think about. And what am I getting out of all these podcasts? And the risk, the danger in listening to all this content all the time. And I was listening to my entire podcast consumption was all video games related. I was also feeling the weight of these shows and wanting to stay on top of what they were talking about. I had this pang of wanting to keep up with them and play the things that they were playing and have an opinion as well. And so I'd really push myself to play a lot of these games, even though I didn't have time. And that became really evident when I became a father for the first time and shrank down quite a bit. And like I mentioned before, with 2 kids, shrank even more. And so the time commitment with these games is a whole other thing. A lot of these games are massive. They take forever. And those are the types of games I want to tackle. I want to enjoy and steep myself in. Some of my fondest memories are just getting lost for hours in these games and not having anything else to worry about but that. And there was actually another moment in that episode with Kevin where he touched on this as well, and I'll play that for you right now.
And I just started Clear Obscure Expedition 33, which is actually like pretty fantastic so far. And I played like 5 hours in the past 3 days. I'm just like, that's too much game time, So I don't know. That's the other thing too, is like, I think we should sort of be skeptical of how much like modern games want us to play them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think they're very, especially like on the mainstream side, like very respectful of our time. I like played 1 zillion hours of like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth last year until I realized like, this is like not a very good game. So to say the balance, it's like, I actually really, I try to not play video games as much as I want. I don't think it's, I kind of think it's like a little unhealthy to play them at the level that a lot of people do.
I don't think I disagree with what Kevin says there, but that's not the point of bringing that up. The point is that a lot of these games I felt like do require a lot of investment in time. Sometimes it's sticking around with the story, making sure you don't forget the mechanics. Sometimes it's that, when you get involved with a quest or a story beat or an act, you want to follow it all the way through, and it's hard to put down. Picking it back up, games don't make it very easy to remember what you were doing. Games started feeling like they weren't even fun because I couldn't invest the time to immerse myself in them or learn the mechanics and be a part of it. So I really kind of just stopped playing games altogether. I was super burnt out at work. I was on a project that was just annihilating me. I'd actually cried at work a couple times for the first time in my life because of this and dreaming about what could be, but instead I was focused on this thing that was really just sapping all my energy. A lot of that's on me. I probably should have said something, but it was very tough. But the other part was I was looking at all the stuff I wanted to be and looking back at my journey with games specifically, going and saying I want to be part of this. This is my dream. And also looking at my my age, going, I'm 40 at the end of this year. And that was scary to me. It's always been scary. 40 is not an age that I ever thought I would be. Would I even be able to enter something new or an industry or a profession that's not something I do now at this age with the lack of time I have? And could I afford to make a pivot like that? Needless to say, all this stuff kind of boiled together at some point. And I just said, you know what would happen if I stopped cold turkey with all of this gaming stuff? What if I just stopped listening to it, stopped reading media about it, stopped even playing games. It was a scary notion because I think it's a big part of my identity. I wanted to be a part of this. I wanted to be informed. This was what I felt like was the right thing if this was what I wanted my future to be. And it was kind of scary to say, like, I'm going to set this part of my identity aside and in a weird way, part of my dreams aside of being part of this. I really grappled with this for a number of months. I ended up subscribing to every TED podcast there is, the TED Foundation podcasts, and I would just listen to those. I didn't know a lot of the hosts or the shows or whatever, but I just wanted to see like what was out there, and I felt like instead of going through like the top podcasts or whatever, the most popular, I think I understand the mission of TED, and there's a lot of really interesting talks out there. I had liked some of their podcasts in the past, so this might be a good way, a good smattering of podcasts that I could subscribe to and maybe find some new ideas and some new, things to latch onto. And that, kind of worked. I ended up falling in love with TED Talks Daily, which is a nice short daily podcast. I came back to the TED Radio Hour, which I had dropped and again fell back in love with. And I found Rethinking with Adam Grant. But listening to these kind of shown me that there was so much more outside of just the stuff that I was consuming, that my media diet was probably causing me a lot of stress and anxiety. I went back to listening to some of the shows that I liked, incorporated some of these new TED podcasts, found some other ones like Hidden Brain, things that interested me like psychology and stuff like that. Mixed my diet a little bit, which is great. Was not concerned with finishing all of the podcasts and really just kind of made it more like, hey, when I get around to this, I'll pick an episode that sounds interesting and I'll jump into that. When I was playing with my kids or whatever, I'd look over at my bookshelf and go, man, there's a lot of books that I haven't read in there that seem very attractive. I'd really love to pick those up and start reading them. After doing dishes at night, I would come back to my room and basically have no more time left in the day, no more energy. So I'm not going to pick up a game. I can't get invested in that, but I've got maybe 20 to 30 minutes before I pass out. And I found that reading was the best thing for me. So I would actually started reading a lot more than I had been in the past couple of years. And even if it was just chipping away at a few pages, it felt good. It felt very therapeutic and restorative. And I could pick these up and not feel like I was totally missing out and totally forgetting everything that was happening. And again, you can get through a chapter or just a few pages, and it didn't feel like that same kind of weightiness of a video game. And I was able to start making way on some of the books that I had been wanting to read for a very long time. Alongside this, sometimes when I open up my podcast player, especially on commutes, none of these podcasts seemed appealing to me. And so I started trying some audiobooks. I finished 2 this year amongst my podcast listening. I wanted to figure out, could I build a rhythm with this? Should they fit into my diet at a specific time? And the answer was no. It was just whenever I felt like it, I'd pick these back up again. And just like reading, I felt like I could get back into them without feeling so far behind. So what is the point of all of this? I haven't done another episode of Why Button because I have been in this sort of scramble of my own mind of trying to figure out what is going on. I think those 2 points that I brought up from the episode with Kevin were very important and critical for me to think about and ruminate on. And I think the point is that I've learned that when life feels like too much, that when your anxiety is peaking or you feel you no longer have time to engage with the things that you love, yet you're afraid to let them go because you feel that they are part of your identity, that it's actually okay to try just for a little while. You will not fall behind. You will not lose yourself. You may find new things to enjoy. You may realize that the things you thought were bringing you joy were bringing you quite the opposite. Or best of all, you'll realize that those things that you love and identify with are in fact true, like a reaffirmation that can make your attachment and passion for those things even greater. And that's what I found. After taking time away from games and games-related media this year, I learned that yes, in fact, I do care very much about games. I care about them for numerous reasons that I've explored on this show, but maybe most of all, the awe that they inspire in me. And with that, I'd like to close this with a clip from my episode with Tom Mullen of the Washed Up Emo podcast. Thank you very much for listening.
What is it that keeps you so interested in games? You talk about it from, when you're a kid, and seeing the source behind it and the sort of magical experience of early games. But there's this like compulsion to keep, this interest that keeps riding with you throughout your life. For you, what do you feel like that is? Have you ever considered that or thought about that?
Oh my God, all the time. It's very similar to music. Opening up an email, or opening up a CD or vinyl, or someone saying, "This is cool, check it out." That's a cool pause. That's a cool moment to be like, "Oh shit, what am I about to hear?" The same thing with games. What am I about to play?